You do good work. You work hard. But I want to share with you that your client experience may not be as good as you think. Listen in to find out where you can begin creating a seamless client experience. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Be a Better Lawyer podcast. Today, I want to talk to you about creating a seamless client experience. Whether you own your own practice or you work for a law firm, you're going to want to take away what I share with you here because if you're working for a law firm, you have a client, that's your boss. And if you have your own firm, you have many people walking through your doors or finding you online. And it is important, it is crucial that you are paying attention to your client experience. Now, you may do fabulous work. In fact, if you're listening to this, I believe you are likely doing amazing work because you are constantly looking to improve yourself. You want to create a great client experience. The problem is clients don't always communicate with you what they truly think and what they truly feel because they are not honest communicators. They don't want you to feel bad. And they simply don't want the hassle of getting involved in that kind of a conversation. So I'm going to have an honest conversation with you today, beginning with an experience that I had with a law firm recently, which is the inspiration for this episode. And I'd like to think that I am pretty darn good at managing my mind around poor client experiences. I've had many great experiences. I've had many poor experiences. And in this particular experience, I found them online. I had a referral source that I attempted to get a referral for an attorney, but they couldn't find anyone that they really knew. And I just moved states. So I'm kind of shooting in the dark here. I was looking online and I thought I'd found a really great firm. And they still may turn out to be a fabulous firm. The vote is out on that one right now. What I really want to focus on here, though, is the experience that I had because I have really great mind management. I have the ability to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I still had these thoughts and feelings come up around this client experience. So if I'm having them, your clients are having them, and they're not necessarily sharing them with you because they're busy people and they don't want to hurt your feelings. But I am going to give you a very honest breakdown of what my experience has been and what I have worked with my clients on to create seamless client experiences, ones that lead to more referrals, ones that lead to positive customer reviews, ones that lead to increased client retention. And if you are having any friction in your business, it is so important that we look at it from a perspective of it is our responsibility, not our client's responsibility, to manage ourselves in a way where we can solve for these problems, no matter how uncomfortable they might be. That means not making any assumptions about your client experience and how good it is. It means opening your mind to what other people think and also looking at the facts of your business and seeing what the facts reflect. And we're going to break this down so that you can see where you might be able to improve your client experience. I want you to have the most fabulous business. I want you to love your work. I want you not to feel resentment towards your clients. I want you to wake up every day excited to serve them. And what happens is when we don't focus on what I'm going to be talking to you about today, we begin to get into resentment. We begin to believe that there's something wrong with the client or that we should be working harder. But the truth is that we just need to start looking at what's going on in your practice and where there are problem points and then addressing them, problem solving them. So I do this with my clients all the time. If they start noticing some frustrations, maybe they're getting a lot of emails from clients, maybe they're receiving some bad reviews and they don't understand why they're getting them. Maybe they're not getting any reviews because a lot of times clients will not leave reviews, period, whether they have a really good experience or a really bad experience. So these kinds of things are very self-evident when you look at your practice the way we're going to look at it today. So let's talk about what your client experience currently is. This is a question you're going to want to answer for yourself. And as we go through this episode, I'm going to be giving you questions to think about and to begin answering so that you can create the client experience that I know you want to create for your clients. You just may not have this information. So let's talk about my experience first, just so you know where I'm coming from. So I hired this firm. First of all, I called them, I set up an appointment. They had somebody on the other end who, set up my appointment and set up some expectations. And that person didn't really know all of the things they needed to know to set up my appointment properly, but that was okay. I let that go. The person's probably being trained, not a big deal. And then I go into the consult, and the attorney is really nice. I really like him. And I think, okay, this person's really good at explaining things. One of the things I think makes a really great attorney is somebody who can break down really complex issues in a very simple way. This person was able to do that. And I appreciated that. I got really great information from this person. And so at that point, the attorney said, all right, when we get off the call, I am going to send you some additional forms so that I can get some additional information from you and we can move this forward. That all happened on a Monday. And I didn't hear from them all week. So on Friday early morning, I sent an email saying, hey, I just want to make sure you have all the information you need from me because I was told on Monday that I was going to be receiving some additional documentation because they wanted to make sure they had all the information they need to move forward. So I just want to make sure that everything's moving forward with the work. And I didn't get an email Friday. That's fine. Totally get it. Like, people sometimes take Fridays off. I didn't get an email on the weekend. Of course, I don't expect emails on weekends because I don't expect people to be working on weekends. And I don't think most of your clients do either, unless you're setting up that expectation that you will. And you can do that in a number of ways, including responding to your emails on weekends. And I didn't receive an email response on Monday, and I haven't received one yet on Tuesday, which is fine. It's still early morning. And so I just watched my brain and I watched my body to kind of understand how was I thinking and feeling about this whole situation. And I noticed myself second guessing my decision to move forward with this attorney. I noticed myself wondering if I made the right decision. And I can manage my mind around that. I make decisions the right decision. Most clients cannot manage their mind around these things. Most clients are not going to be able to do these things. They're not getting coaching. They're not listening to this podcast. Maybe they're not into self-improvement. So just know that most people will not understand or give the benefit of the doubt. I will, because I completely understand the nature of a business and the nature of, working with people. So I said, all right, well, I didn't hear from them on Friday, understandable. Didn't hear from them on Monday, understandable. And now I'm here on Tuesday and I could watch my brain say, ooh, I better just double check. Let me look at their reviews. And I look at their reviews and, it was a couple people who were complaining about things that didn't really need to be complained about. But I noticed myself going to this person's reviews. What other clients will do is actually look at those reviews and look at them as confirmation that they made a wrong decision and then decide to change course. I did not do that. I saw some negative reviews, but you know how people leave reviews and they're not really substantive reviews, or it's something that is so off the wall that it makes no sense that they're publishing it. You could just tell that they're very just resentful, angry people. And so I didn't pay any heed to the reviews that I read. I thought, no big deal. But then I watched my brain want to check for anything going on the bar website, that kind of stuff. And so I checked. Nothing, of course, is bad or wrong or anything like that on the website. But I just want to bring this up because this is the process that a client's brain is going to go through if you're not setting up a seamless client experience. And this is coming from somebody who manages their mind pretty darn well. So I want to share this with you so that you don't make the mistakes that this person did, and also that so that you can look at your client experience as is and start to improve it, because it is always something that we can be doing. Now, we know you have to make priorities, but this is a priority. It is one of your top priorities because you're not going to stay in business unless you are creating a seamless client experience. All right, so let's take a look at this. Let's break down my experience and let's talk a little bit about your experience, because you might not have as seamless a client experience as you think. This office seemed to have a pretty good setup, a pretty good system, right? You or your staff responds to calls right away for a new client. Maybe you have staff or you communicate the expectations going into the consult, knowing what's going to happen during the consult. You may even have a great consult and the client might even say yes, but then something happens. You or someone on your team drops the ball. A promise made on the consult isn't met in a timely manner, right? So for instance, in this case, they said they were going to be sending me some additional documents they needed me to fill out right away so that I could move forward with the process. I didn't get those. And it was also, to me, seemed kind of odd. I didn't get any bill for services, anything like that. I didn't receive anything. Now, I received a quote on the consult. I got all the information I needed, all of that good stuff, but I didn't get any of the follow-up documentation, which is what made my mind uneasy. And so your job as an attorney is to create a supportive environment, one where you're creating a container to hold your client, to let them know that they are safe and that you've got them step by step by step. And that's how you want to look at your client experience, is just looking at it step by step by step, which is what we're going to start doing here with this episode. So other ways that you or your staff might drop the ball unknowingly is that there's a client email that comes in your inbox and they're requesting clarification on something that wasn't answered. Or maybe in my case, it's just responding to the fact that there was no follow-up as was promised. So then their mind starts thinking, okay, maybe I made a mistake here. Maybe I should start looking for another attorney just to make sure I get the work done, because I need to make sure that the work is done. And the client, this is what's really important here, begins to feel more responsible for getting the work completed because the lawyer isn't taking responsibility for the client's experience. The client starts feeling a weight. The client starts thinking about this. The client starts doing all this extra footwork that they shouldn't have to do. So your job as a lawyer who owns a business or works for somebody else and they are your client, your boss is your client, is to make your client feel supported, to know exactly what's going on and when it's going to happen. It's to set yourself up as the trusted resource, the person who is going to catch them if they fall, the person who is going to answer all the unanswered questions going on in their head ahead of time, so they don't feel the weight of trying to figure out whether they should hire another attorney, if they made the right decision, if they should be emailing again, should they call the office? Like all of these questions running through their head. And for most people, and this is why I think attorneys get really frustrated when they get emails and calls from clients, is they start to think that the client is the problem. No, the problem is things were not done in advance to set your client up for the most supportive experience. Now, are there people who are extra needy? Yeah, of course. But I will share with you that most, I would say 99% of the time when I am talking to a client about this, They're getting annoyed. Lawyers are getting annoyed at emails and calls from clients that could have been solved early on in the process. Like I'm talking the consult or pre-consult. These are things you can solve for ahead of time. And in fact, it's your responsibility to solve for them ahead of time. So let's talk about what client experience means first, because I think a lot of people might get this concept confused. When lawyers hear client experience, they may automatically think responsiveness, friendliness, doing good work. Yes, but improving your client's experience is not about being nicer, responding to emails a million times, or giving the cheapest rates, or working harder, or trying to get things done faster. No, that's not what improving your client experience is about. It's about creating peace of mind. It's about reducing the friction your clients and even your employees experience. Because if your clients are experiencing friction, your staff likely is too. We're going to talk about that. Client experience is also about increasing your capacity to serve at your highest level so you can receive the benefit of referrals and increased client retention and all of that. So you are actually, when you are responsible for your client's experience, benefiting your entire practice, every inch of it. And you are beginning to build a brand without doing more marketing. You don't have to market to get more leads coming in, right? So this is really interesting when we're not focusing on creating an amazing client experience for the clients coming in our door already and the ones that we have currently, then no amount of marketing in the world is going to improve your business. Yeah, you'll still make money, but you're not going to improve at the rate that you could be. You're not going to grow at the rate that you could be. So I want you to really sit with this. And when I work with my lawyer clients on calming their overwhelm, this solves for most of the problems. We start to really get their brain in a state where they can solve these problems very easily. But what I'm also going to share with you today is going to help you think about issues your client has with your services that you might not be even aware of. So let's start by saying what the misdiagnoses are. So a lot of times the problem is misdiagnosed. We're talking about client experience here. And if you're looking at client experience from fixing the wrong problem, then you're not going to make the progress that you want to make. So let's talk about the false priorities that lawyers focus on instead of really focusing on what you need to be thinking about to improve your client experience. So those false priorities include I need to constantly give my client updates. A lot of lawyers think that this is something you have to do all the time. Now, yes, you do want to update your clients when something important happens on the case. Absolutely. What I'm addressing here, though, are those complaints I hear that clients are constantly emailing me. I never get any peace. They're constantly coming in. No, what's happened here isn't that you're not constantly responding to emails or giving the updates that you need to be giving them. What's happened is that you haven't clearly set up expectations as to when you're going to start the work, when you expect that you're going to get them items for their review, and then you simply just follow through with what you say you're going to do. So think about that. There may be some other things going on too. That's going to be your work to think about. What could you solve for those emails that are coming in your office? Maybe you're getting emails that are saying, oh my gosh, where's my work? Or, oh my gosh, have you started yet? And it may not be that you haven't updated them. Maybe you haven't, but did you in the consult lay out clear expectations as to when the work was going to begin, when they were going to get billed, how much they were going to get billed, what their retainer was going to be, whether or not there was going to be an increase in that retainer, when that would happen? Really step by step, look at what information you are giving your client during the consult. Are you setting up expectations for how many times you're going to email them? Are you setting up expectations as to when they're going to receive an update? Because you may only give an update when something actually happens on a case. So that's something to think about, and then make sure that you are informing your client of that upfront. This is setting up expectations. When people talk about client control, this is part of client control so that you are not getting frequent emails. Or one of the thoughts that lawyers tell me they have is like, I just need to hire more help. I need more people to help me answer these calls, to answer these emails. When in actuality, hiring more help is going to magnify any disorganization that is currently happening in your practice. So you've got to systematize before you scale. I'm doing this with a client right now who was telling me that she was having too much, she wasn't having enough time to do things in her practice. And I said, okay, well, let's look at exactly what's going on, because if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're not addressing something. Maybe you do want to have another person, but we want to calm the overwhelm before you hire anybody, because as soon as you hire somebody, you're going to need to train them, or you're going to need to train somebody to train them. You're going to have to make sure that you have all of the SOPs, the standard operating procedures that you want to have in your office in place. You're going to want to understand how to hire for culture. Right. So if you're not thinking about these things ahead of time and then you're starting to bring people in, you're going to have more disorganization. You're not going to maybe have somebody who fits your culture because you're hiring out of desperation, because you're so busy. You just need somebody to come in. And that is not the solution. You need to think through these problems first. This is what I help my clients with every single day. When they have a problem that comes up, we start creating solutions, simple solutions that are going to save them time, that are going to save them money, that's going to save them headaches. Because if you are hiring to solve this problem of having too many emails or too many phone calls coming in, you're going to waste that money. You're going to drive yourself insane. And it is not the solution that you need. So let's just take away that misdiagnosis. That is not what you want. You need to systematize before you decide you're going to scale anything. You need to prioritize setting time aside to work on your business and to do these things. If you're telling yourself right now you don't have time to do that, you need to focus on your time management skills first. Because if you're not focused on your time management skills, you're not going to be able to solve any of these other problems. Like, this episode is really implying that you need to already have your time management issues in hand so that you can address this. We prioritize what matters most to us. And if you want to grow your business, if you want to create an amazing client experience, if you don't want disorganization or feeling rushed or hiring people out of desperation and creating a bigger problem in your practice, then the time management issue has to be solved. Now, you can stay up later at first, right? Like, you could stay up later, do these things, get some SOPs in place, start to think about hiring. You could do that. You could stay up late for that. Is that what you signed up for as an attorney? Probably not. What you can do is start to learn how to take back control of your practice when you take control of your time. Then you have this space that you consciously open up so that you can focus on these crucial issues in your business. All right, let's move on and let's talk about another misdiagnosis. A lot of lawyers tell me, I just need to catch up first. So that means I need to work harder. That means I need to stay later. That means I need to take work home on the weekends. I need to get up earlier. No, what this is a priorities problem. And you're never going to solve a problem by saying, oh, I need to catch up first. What needs to happen is honest communication with your clients. I've had clients who tell me, I have so much work. I have such a backlog. I need to catch up on my work. What we do is we tackle the difficult conversations, because it's difficult having a conversation with a client and saying, hey, I know I promised you 2 weeks, but it's actually going to be 6 weeks. It's hard to say. And if you don't learn how to manage your mind around it and beginning to say those things to your clients now, you are going to create a world of pain. When you begin to learn to manage yourself and manage your practice and be the leader in your practice and create a container for your clients to feel safe and secure and supported, then these conversations become less difficult, because you know the value of creating that environment for your clients. You show up in a different way. Your identity as an attorney becomes the leader, becomes the person who's coming in shepherding your clients versus just saying, oh, 2 weeks, it'll be done in 2 weeks. And instead, you are taking a thoughtful approach to your practice and looking at whether or not telling your client and setting up that expectation for 2 weeks out, I'll have your work to you, if that is creating a safe and supportive environment for your client and for you. Because a lot of times lawyers are just throwing out numbers of when work can be done because they think that's the number that they should be saying, that their clients should expect probably about 2 weeks. No. And it's so funny. 2 weeks is the number I hear all the time from lawyers. That's why I'm using that, is they think, oh, my clients just think it should be done in 2 weeks. It's like, no, you think it should be done in 2 weeks. And then you set up the expectation with your client that it's 2 weeks. And then you wonder why you're burning out. You wonder why you feel behind. You wonder why you think you need to catch up in order to build your business. No, you actually need to stop some of the things that you're doing. That's like, there's like this whole, it's like if you think about a tree and you think about all the roots that stem out from the tree, all of those roots are taking nutrients from the soil and they're bringing it up through the tree, through the branches, the trunk, the leaves, all of it. So what is it that you are feeding your law practice? If you think about your law practice as that tree, are you feeding false expectations to that tree, right? Are you feeding lack of boundaries to that tree? Are you feeding lack of clarification and communication to that tree? Because if you are doing that, if you're going into consults not setting up expectations or setting up false expectations or not clearing up expectations or not communicating what the client should expect next, then you're not setting up your practice for success, for the growth that you want it to. So a lot of times what I need to do with the lawyers that I work with is we need to back up things a little bit. And you've probably heard this before. You've got to slow down to grow. What we do is we say, look, let's look at what's going on in your practice right now. Where are you not setting expectations? Where are you not fulfilling promises? Let's check everything that's going on and let's see what needs to be stemmed. It's like stemming the bleeding from your body. Because if you aren't stemming the bleeding of communication or lack of communication, any of these things, or lack of revenue coming in, or lack of communications, or lack of training, or lack of systems, well, you're going to bleed out. So we've got to slow down, stem all the places where you're bleeding, and then we can move forward. And then you become so much more healthier. Your business becomes so much healthier. All right, so let's talk about another misdiagnosis I hear from clients is I need better clients. I need different clients because clearly these clients are bad clients. No, they're not bad clients. They're clients who haven't gotten what they needed in one way or another. And when we look at any problem in a business from in our business, from the perspective of I'm responsible, not that I'm blaming myself or beating myself or judging myself or telling myself I'm bad, right? Never come from that experience, but coming from the perspective of, okay, wait a minute. I create this experience as my business. I actually create the experiences my clients have. And if I'm seeing patterns in these experiences, if I'm seeing patterns of getting a ton of calls, a ton of emails, it's my responsibility to address them. My offer to you is you take every perceived problem in your practice as an opportunity to take responsibility for it and look deeper. And when we take responsibility for a problem, we actually have the power to solve for it. We can take action on it. So I encourage you to do this. Another misdiagnosis is I need better software. Tech is not going to fix broken processes. Processes have to come first. All right, let's move on to what happens when you don't prioritize your client experience, where you're going to miss deadlines. Clients are going to feel confused. There are going to be dropped balls both by you and or your staff, and clients aren't going to complain about it. They're just not going to come back, or they're not going to refer, and they might even leave a bad review. And then you burn out from constantly compensating for the lack of structure. So earlier on, I said, your responsibility is to create support for your clients to feel supported and have a really great client experience. But your job is also to create that support for yourself, to really do what you need to do in order to get the support you need. That might be asking questions of your assistant, getting help from your assistant. So it might be hiring a coach, it might be taking a course, whatever it is, you also need to support yourself. And then you're not burning out. You have the structure that's going to create what you need to move forward and to grow. I also want to offer to you that your employees, if you've got staff, they also feel uneasy because there aren't processes in place that make it easy for them to succeed in their roles. And they may be continually fielding emails from clients who haven't been responded to properly. And you need to hear from them. You need to have a process to get that information from them. So that's something that I want to offer to you is ensuring that you have, and we're going to get to some questions here in a second to ensure that you have a process to get the information that you need from your staff so that you can address issues as they come up, but you can address it in a more comprehensive way where you're creating a system to really streamline that client experience versus putting you in the position of needing to answer every email, every situation. So let's talk about how the internal experience that you're having shapes the external experience that those around you are having. Because you can't deliver an excellent client experience when your internal world is in chaos. I want you to ask yourself these questions. Do you know how much time you actually need to complete projects? It's not just 2 weeks, right? Do you know how many other projects that you have that are ahead in the line so that you know it's not 2 weeks, it's actually going to be 4 weeks because you have additional projects that are already ahead in the line? It's really important that you know the work that you already have in your office and put it on your calendar to give yourself a wide berth so that you understand, well, if my estate plan takes me 8 hours, let's just say, I'm making this up, and then I need to ensure that I have 8 hours worth of quality work time between the time I sign a client and the time that I am actually promising delivery. And I need to ensure that I'm moving my other cases forward at the same time. So I have to ensure that there's time for me to work on any cases that might be older cases that I haven't delivered on yet. There are things that I need to ensure that I'm doing in my business so I can continue to bring in leads. These are the things we've got to be thinking about. And if you haven't thought about this, start thinking about it because that's all got to be included in the time that you have during your work week. Another question to ask yourself is, do you communicate honestly with clients or do you avoid hard conversations because you don't like the way you feel? You're afraid that they're not going to like you, or you're afraid that they're going to have thoughts about you that are negative. You're afraid that they're going to leave. You cannot make decisions in your practice based on those thoughts and the uncomfortable feelings that you have, the fears that you have. Because if you do, you're going to regret every choice that you make. You're going to become a people pleaser and you are going to experience burnout. But if you're honest with yourself about how much time you need and what you need and the information you need from your clients, and then you're honest with them upfront about that. And if you've overextended yourself, be honest with yourself about that and then have a conversation with your clients about it. I know this is not like the fun part of practicing law, but you signed up to be a business owner, not just a lawyer. You signed up to be somebody who's responsible in a larger way. If you're working for somebody else, you also signed up for setting up your expectations for your client, your boss, right? And ensuring that you're communicating to them if you are having difficulty meeting your commitments. That's something that you've got to be able to communicate. And yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it's better to experience that discomfort now than to feel horrible later when you're not delivering on your promises and maybe even experiencing some negative blowback from that. And that's one of the things that, I work on, especially with my clients who come to me who are super overwhelmed and they've got a lot of people coming in. My clients, they'll usually have tons of people coming in, but then they don't know what to do because they've set up these expectations with their clients that they're going to get work done fast. And so then they're pushing themselves beyond the limits to try to get that work turned over. But what really needs to happen is for them to learn how to manage themselves, to understand their practice in a better, more comprehensive way, to understand how to manage their time. And then when they do that, then they can prioritize the difficult conversations they need to have. And that's really what gets you your time back. That's really what gets you your sanity back and helps you get your client experience back in order. All right. So now let's talk about the questions you might want to ask yourself around creating stronger systems in your practice. So the first one is, do you have onboarding checklists? Is your pricing clear? And a lot of times my clients just kind of make up pricing on the fly when they come to me. They're just like, I'm like, okay. And then it feels horrible for them. And then they're discounting themselves unknowingly because they haven't really thought about it. They're just reacting in the moment of a consult to how they feel and then giving their pricing and trying to remember how much the pricing is. So it may be really beneficial to you to put your pricing in writing for yourself. You don't have to show it to your client. And that way, when you go into a consult, you have it to review. You can remind yourself why you had decided that you were going to charge those rates to begin with, because a lot of times we forget, right? If you're a lawyer, you forget. And then if you want to have a conversation with your client about the reasoning behind prices, you don't have them at your fingertips. It's not fresh in your mind. So that might be something that benefits you. And another question to ask yourself to really create stronger systems in your practice is, does your staff know how to support you proactively? So I have one client I'm thinking of right now. She and I worked through a retainer agreement because the retainer agreement had some holes in it. And one of the things that she was finding was a problem in the system she had set up is that her clients would have low retainers and then she would do work, but then not be getting paid for it necessarily right away. And then she'd have to have a conversation with the client and say, oh, I did this extra work. And then, this needs to be paid for. And so that led to some awkwardness versus now she's trained her assistant to keep her eye out every single week, going through the clients that she has and checking for low retainers. And then in their weekly meeting, which they now have, the assistant can bring up and say, hey, I'm noticing that this person has a low retainer. They need to have a conversation so they can replenish their retainer. And that issue can be addressed right away versus having that just come up out of nowhere and then you're putting out a fire. Another thing to ask yourself is, do you have a weekly check-in with your staff to see if you have any issues coming up? Are there emails that are coming in? Are there more emails than usual? Is there something going on where you should be aware of? Are you getting odd phone calls from clients? Are you getting phone calls about practice areas you don't practice in? Like, you want to have your finger on the pulse of these things. And to do that, you need to have regular communication with your staff and not just in the hallway kind of conversations. That way you can sit down, you can have a conversation with them, and you can say, how can I help you make it easier on yourself for handling these kinds of clients? What kind of questions do you see coming in on a regular basis? And then you can see, okay, these questions are coming in pretty frequently. How am I addressing them, or am I addressing them in the consult? Because this seems like something that we could stem and I can make less work for my staff. Those are different things that you can do, different questions you can ask yourself so that you can begin to create better systems. And that's going to not only set expectations that build trust, it's going to protect your time, it's going to protect your revenue, and then you're training your staff how to interact with clients in a better way. And you're setting up expectations for your clients so that they understand the process and they understand that they're not going to hear from you all the time, but they will hear from you when you do have something of importance to tell them. All right. The next thing that I want to share with you are all of the objections that may have come up in your head as you were listening to this podcast, thinking, oh my gosh, another thing I need to do in my business, another thing I need to do in order to ensure that I'm successful and I'm thriving and that my clients are happy. Here's what I want to share with you. First of all, everything that you're thinking is normal, but if you want to be the lawyer who is the leader in your firm creating that support, then you can't let these thoughts that I'm going to share with you are to deter you from doing what needs to get done. So one thought I've already talked about is I don't have time. You already spend time fixing mistakes. Well, let's spend less time by building better systems. So that's the investment that you're making. You're making a trade-off. And then the long term, you're going to receive higher dividends when you begin fixing these right away. Another thought that might have come up for you is I don't know where to start. Well, start with the questions that I asked you here in this episode. And then also look at what are the most frustrating or repeated parts of your client flow, your intake, your emails, the fee questions, those kinds of things. Where are those frustrations? And you can find that out from your staff. Where are these frustrations coming up for clients? Where are the frustrations coming up for you with your staff? Like find those things out, ask those questions. Another thought that you might be having is that, my clients, they're not complaining. They're fine, right? Well, client silence doesn't equal satisfaction. So I want to encourage you to aim for delight and not just no complaints. I want you to really, and I know that this is something that you want to do, or you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. You want to excel in every single area, including delivery to your clients. And so just know that if people aren't saying anything, it doesn't mean that they're not having these thoughts. I already explained that earlier, that that's what my brain was doing. And it's what your clients may be experiencing as well. It's your responsibility to put yourself in your client's shoes and understand the client journey, to understand step by step what somebody needs to feel supported. And the best way you can do this is start looking at the client experiences you have and understand where you don't feel supported, where you're feeling like you have to ask extra questions, where you're taking on the weight of trying to get work done. Notice where that's coming up in your life with your other projects going on in your life, whether you've got somebody who's working on your roof or doing your plumbing or, selling you a car. Notice all of those interactions that you have, because that is going to inform what you do and do not want to do in your own practice. And then another thought that may have come up when I was talking about how long projects might take and setting expectations for your clients is in terms of how long your projects are going to take you to complete, is that if you tell them something longer than 2 weeks, let's say, since that was the time frame I was using as an example, the client is going to think that I'm lazy or unprofessional, and they're going to be really upset. That's a thought that has come up in my coaching calls. And it's really interesting because what do you think is going to come off as more professional? Somebody who is honest about the timelines and commitments that they have, or someone who is trying to people please the client and try to manipulate the client? And yes, people pleasing is manipulation. Trying to manipulate the client into saying yes by saying a timeline that has nothing to do with reality in your practice. Which is more professional? And if you know which one is more professional, and I know you do, then a client is going to respect the timeline that you share with them. And honestly, the client is always looking to you as an authority. And if you are an authority and you're honest with them, then they are going to have the ability to make a choice, right? Okay, the person in authority has said, these are my options. I can wait 6 weeks, right? Or if this is an emergency, I can pay an additional fee, right? Because you don't have to just do 2 weeks whenever. You can choose to do 2 weeks, but maybe it's an additional fee because it's a rush job that they want you to do. That is an extra fee. If you want something done in an expedited way, that's an extra fee. And then the person who is coming to you, if you stay out of their brain and you're not trying to manipulate them, you can give them the choice of saying, yes, I would like to wait 4 weeks. I'm fine with that. Or yes, I would like to pay a fee for expedited service. Or no, I think I'm going to go to Bob Smith down the street. That gives them their options. But as long as you're trying to manipulate them, you are not going to have the overall client satisfaction in your practice. You are not going to have overall satisfaction with yourself and fulfillment with yourself. You're going to feel resentment. You're going to feel angry, and you're going to hate your law practice, and you're eventually going to burn out. That's why these questions are so important to take a look at. And being honest with yourself and being honest with your clients is a must. And when you begin doing this, when you begin improving your client experience, improving your experience in your practice, you're going to have fewer fires, which means you're going to have more time for really high value work and maybe even time to pursue a practice area that's been calling to you. You're going to have more referrals, so it's going to cost less to market. I have one client who gets so many referrals. It's just constant referrals. And I know that that is a big source of revenue for lawyers, but then a lot of lawyers worry that their referrals are going to dry up. But as long as you're giving really great service and as long as you're connecting with the people who are referring you, oh my gosh, you are going to be able to succeed for so long. And then you want to ensure you're creating these better boundaries. That's really honesty. That's a boundary, right? Being honest. All right. I think we've got it all. Like the clear fees means you're less likely to discount. You're going to have increased profitability when you're really clear on what your prices are and you're communicating them in your consults. All of these things are going to increase to increased revenue, increased ROI, just doing these little things. And they're not little things. They're big deals to your clients because your clients want that stability. They want that support, and only you can provide it to them. You are the one who is there, who understands the problem, who can go in and then solve for that problem. And you don't need to fix everything all at once. I know you've got a whole list of priorities. I get it. But just pick one, work on that, and take it one at a time. And pick the priority. Pick the one that's most important to you and to your practice. This is something that you can do. It doesn't take a lot of time. You can put 30 minutes to an hour on your calendar once a week. You can do this. And if you want help implementing this, if you want help really solving for these kinds of problems in your law practice that you just can't see because you've got so much going on and you don't really know where to start, I want to encourage you to book a strategy session with me. You can book at dinacataldo.com/strategy session. These are the kinds of problems that I solve for my clients all the time. It increases their revenue. It increases their love of the law practice again. And it allows them to have a life and feel secure leaving the office, leaving staff in charge, because they have these systems in place, because they've created these streamlined processes in every corner of their practice. And they are the ones who are putting it into place. They are the ones who are responsive and are able to enjoy their lives more. And they don't have that mismatch, right? Because they're in alignment, they're in harmony, their law practice is in harmony, their processes are in harmony, their life is in harmony. And so they're not worried when they leave the office about what's going on at the office or whether or not their clients are being taken care of or whether or not their staff is responsive as they need them to be, because they have already gone through the problems and they've solved for them. So if you would like help with this, book that strategy session at dinacataldo.com/strategy session. All right. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week. I'll talk to you next week. If you love what you're learning on the podcast, join me inside one of my coaching programs. There, we'll take what you're learning here, put it into practice, and take your life and law practice to levels you didn't know possible. You can work with me one-on-one or inside of Timepiece for Lawyers, my signature group coaching program, by going to dinacataldo.com. That's dinacataldo.com. There you can sign up for a complimentary strategy session and sign up for the waitlist for the next enrollment period for Timepiece for Lawyers. Now is the time to take charge of your life and your law practice. I will help you every step of the way. Let's go.